Hey guys, it's Rachel. It's Thankful Thursday and I'm here with Kel as always, and this week we've been looking at a topic which is from the rota that Ariel put together, and we've been especially looking at this week at unhappiness and trying to deal with unhappiness, and kind of not necessarily distinguishing the difference between kind of depression, low mood, sadness and happiness. I guess those kinds of borders are quite difficult, and I guess, you know, everybody gets sad, everybody can feel unhappy at a certain time. It doesn't, you know, it isn't something that therapy can fix. Because we all experience it. It's an emotion like joy and happiness and anxiety and anger, and they're all things that, you know, kind of normal people deal with as well. And I guess what's going on here is kind of looking at when that goes to depression really, and when the sadness and the unhappiness is kind of long-standing. So we've been looking at all of that this week, and today I'm going to kind of go to the sort of, I guess it is an extreme, and yesterday Ariel touched on kind of, you know, resources and suicide hotlines. So I'm going to be careful here, because I know we've got the rest of the week which is going to deal with kind of, you know, the reality of suicide and dealing with suicide of a family member, and kind of learning how to recognize those kinds of states. And today I want to just talk about why your eating disorder won't help you and why suicide isn't the answer. And then they're kind of quite different issues really, but kind of linked. And I think that what a lot of people find, and this isn't just, you know, with eating disorders, but whether people have anxiety disorders and depression, other mood disorders, personality disorders, anxiety issues, and whether we deal with them with an eating disorder, or whether we deal with them with like self-harming and such things, and quite often there is an overlap with self-injury and suicide, and self-injury isn't necessarily a gesture, I don't even know if that's the right word, of suicide, but the two can sometimes get kind of confused, and, you know, people overdose, but it isn't necessarily a suicide attempt. But what I think happens with an eating disorder, well, what I'm sure happens with an eating disorder is it is a reaction, it is a kind of rebound of trying to deal with something. And it isn't something that just kind of happens overnight. It kind of builds up and then sort of, you know, suddenly hits you really. And it can seem to help. It can. I know that when I was anorexic, the only thing that stopped me being even more depressed was my eating disorder, because my anorexia made me get out of bed, it made me exercise, it made me be proactive, it made me study, it made me do all of these things, because I'd have just felt awful about myself even more if I hadn't got out of bed. And so in that regard, it does help, and that isn't me saying, oh, you know, or go and get eating disorders, but it does serve a purpose. And what happens then is that I mean, it's always destructive, but it can serve a purpose for a period of time. Some people, because of their eating disorders, because of their self-injury or whatever, they say, you know, I wouldn't be alive today if I hadn't been able to cope in that way. And, you know, the scars that are on my arms and on my legs, and, you know, the fact that I was so emaciated and stuff, was, you know, that was me in desperation trying to deal with shit, and trying to deal with my past, and even trying to deal with my present, dealing with my fears of the future. And what happened gradually over time is, as my anorexia developed, my mood, everything started to just come down And what ultimately happened, which was when I was first hospitalised, was that I was on the floor, quite literally, you know, and it was like the worst depression I've ever experienced. And I did make suicide attempts, I did, and the eating disorder only worsens that. And I know that if you're in the midst of it right now and in that struggle, you might be depressed, you might be all of those things, but it's like the only thing keeping you alive. It becomes something that literally helps you breathe. But what will happen is that you will crash, and that's inevitable, and that crashing is nasty and it's horrible, and that's why your eating disorder won't help you, and that's why you need to get help, because it's only going to destroy you. It's not going to make anything better. It's going to just, like, not only is it going to destroy your life and possibly kill you, it's going to destroy the lives of those around you who love you and care for you. And it's just an awful disease. It's an awful disease to suffer from. It's an awful disease to watch people suffer with. And it doesn't work. You know, if it worked, well, people wouldn't end up ill, do you know what I mean? And it doesn't. And I now have enough knowledge, have enough faith, have enough belief, have enough understanding, enough insight that I don't believe I will ever be eating disordered again, because I know too much. And I know too much. I'm too aware of the signs. I know all of that, and I catch it if I even have the thoughts. I'm like on it and I deal with it, and that's what, you know, eventually happens. And eating, they don't work. They just, you know, they're not going to help you. They're never going to help you. And the sooner you realise that, the sooner you can get better, the sooner you can save your own life, the sooner you can make the people around you who love you, you know, help you, engage with you, you know, make them, not that it, you know, recovery is about making other people happy, but, you know, we all have people in our lives, and whether we like it or not, they give a shit about us. And maybe I'm grateful that I got as ill as I did with my eating disorder, because there is no way in God's earth I want to go back there. And suicide attempts or successes don't always happen with people who are eating disordered. An incredibly good friend of mine committed suicide in 2008, and it was horrendous. It was just awful, you know, and she was doing so well, bless her. And, you know, she battled with bulimia and other mental health issues, and quite often people don't just deal with an eating disorder, and then that is quite often why sort of suicide can come in there. But that's not going to solve anything, because, you know, once you're dead, and it will impact the people you leave behind. And it might seem like the only answer you've got, but believe me, it isn't. And what I'm going to do on this video is I'm going to put a link to a website which is actually really good, and you'll find out why. So I'll put that, and I hope I've made some sense today, guys. Okay, bye.